Now, the examples we've just considered suggest that somebody has acted wrongly, not, as utilitarianism tells us, because acting in this way has bad consequences, but there are at least 3 points in it. But because, number one, they're applying one standard to their own actions, which they wouldn't have everybody else follow. So they have another standard by which they will judge everybody else's actions. And that seems to be problematic. So the idea is that they're inconsistent. So somehow inconsistency, they're hypocritical, and actually Kant's going to say it's irrationality that's kind of at the root of what makes things right and wrong according to his theory. One issue is, obviously, and this comes out certainly in the cheating, the Jim and Joan cheating example, is that the right motivation is key to what's going on. It's also highlighted in the tax cheat example. That it's not the consequences that make it wrong, but it's the motivation, the reason that the person is doing it. And finally, coming from highlighting the issue of promises, lying, and Elizabeth Anscombe's issue with giving Harry Truman an honorary degree from Oxford because he dropped the nuclear weapons, because there are certain things, certain absolute moral requirements that just cannot be suspended and don't depend on the circumstances at all. So these are the motivating factors for Kant's theory. Building on these findings or these considerations, Immanuel Kant proposes a theory that is that the morality of an action is dependent on one's doing one's duty, and he tells you he sort of has a test, or at least a condition, in which case, if you're following this condition, if you satisfy this condition, one does his or her duty. But this only happens when an agent can give an answer, a yes answer, to two questions. The first question, critical question for Kant, something that utilitarianism, that John Stuart Mill absolutely says is not a consideration of whether the action is right or wrong. He said maybe when we're evaluating what the person does, at that point the motivation comes in. But Kant says you have to be able to say that the motive for which you're doing, the reason which explains why you are acting in this way, was a proper motive. And the second thing is, in assessing whether the motive is a proper motive, you have to be able to answer yes to the question, was the motive that you applied in this case one that could consistently be applied by the person who's doing it, the person whose motive it is, the person whose reason it is, to all actions by all people, sort of in all cases. So these are fundamental questions that have to get a yes answer, according to Kant, for the action to be right.